you are the story that you tell yourself. And that, I registered that in my mind. It's so true, because if you believe in yourself, you can do a lot more than if you are doubting yourself.
Alex, the Sierra is a place that means a lot to both of us. We were both born in its shadow, and we have a lot of climbing memories from them. How do you describe the Sierra to people who aren't familiar with them?
I think it's the best. I mean, how do you even describe it? It's the Sierra is just big, clean, beautiful, sweeping walls, like perfect white granite. I mean, it ranges from Yosemite, some of the best big walls in the world, to sport climbing, like say at Donner, which is the first place that I grew up sport climbing, to sort of easy multi-pitch adventure, like Lover's Leap, which is the first place everyone's soling, to like big alpine scrambly routes, like say the East Butters of Mount Whitney or something. The High Sierra has a collection of 14,000 foot peaks, I guess, I think, all sort of in a chain. And then almost countless sub-peaks all around them and jagged spires. It's just like it's spines of rock, basically. It's funny because I always think of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado as big lumps of dirt. Because you're like, meh, they're just all eroded and they're just piles of dirt. But the Sierra Nevada is what you imagine is like fantasy mountains, like jagged spires that are connected by like slim ridges that have steep drop-offs on both sides. It's just like limitless mountains going in all directions. It just feels so epic.
When you look at a place like that, where there's limitless mountains all around, there's rock everywhere, do you think the golden age has come and gone for the Sierra?
Well, I think in some ways the golden age maybe hasn't quite arrived for the Sierra. I mean, it's hard to say. I think that a lot of the classic alpine routes have been done in the Sierra, like the easy ridges and the buttresses and things. But just in the last couple of years, people have started putting up some of the hardest and most interesting routes up the bigger faces. I think as gear gets lighter, technology advances, fitness rises, people are sort of looking at these faces in different ways. And, you could probably argue that this is the golden age because people are doing the hardest things now.
Who are we talking to today?
Today we're talking to Vitaliy Musiyenko. He is a Sierra climber. Basically, he's a total dark horse. He's somebody nobody's ever heard of, but somebody who's done a lot of hard climbing and really pushed himself to probably achieve the pinnacle of ridge climbing. I mean, I think it's the biggest traverse ever done in climbing, I bet. Anyway, yeah, I should say he's the father of the Goliath Traverse.
So we're going to be traversing the Sierra, but we have to start in a decidedly different moment, in an entirely different part of the human spectrum of experience.
I'm Alex Honnold.
I'm Fitz Cahall.
This is Climbing Gold.
My name is Vitaliy Musiyenko. I was born in Belarus, about 300 miles north of Chernobyl nuclear reactor. My mom was pregnant when the Chernobyl nuclear reactor exploded.
One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
And I was actually supposed to have a twin brother, and he came out as a stillborn. And as a consequence to this explosion, I had horrible health problems throughout my childhood. And I wasn't even able to participate in the gym class till I was in high school. It's pretty crazy how far I've gone from then to now. At around 6 or 7 years old, I started developing signs of eczema and asthma. Basically, I was designated to only play as a goalie and follow sports on TV at best. My eczema got so bad that I would scratch off all the skin, off all the bends on my whole body. By that, I truly mean it. There would be no skin left. I would just have open meat all around. Then it would crust off and at some point start to get infected and rot. And other parts of my body were covered with these pus-filled boils that would hurt like hell. As a child, I just remember I would stay home and not be able to go to school for weeks at a time when that was going on. And I would just pick at each pimple trying to get the pus out. And the crust that would form would have to be debrided, which means that you put a compress on, and at some point it sticks to that crust, and it has to be ripped off, and some sort of an alcohol-based solution has to be poured over so that it doesn't get affected again, and hopefully you can then form the crust that's not infected.
That's as painful as it sounds, I assume. I mean, is that horrible?
It's not fun.
Yeah, that sounds like the worst. Just like, I'm like, oh my God, like that's horrible.
After talking about it, I don't know how I will bring back a sense of humor into this conversation, but I'll do my best. For most of my life, I was not comfortable talking about it. And I feel now that I'm an adult, I did some therapy, and I can look back at these events and view it as something that gives me extra strength. If I could overcome that, then I could pretty much overcome anything. For most of my life, I had the opposite view of those events. And it's not just horrible health. My mom moved to the United States with her second husband. Immigrating to a new country is just a huge stressor for people. And he became very abusive to me and my mom, and we actually had to escape from him at one point, soon after moving, about 6 months to a year after moving to the United States. It was very difficult to survive because she was working on a low-paying job. When I was about 14, I started passing out flyers for Domino's Pizza, and then I started to work on the inside as soon as I was legally able to work, because you can't till you're about 15. But I ballooned up to about 300 pounds in my early teenage years. I was being made fun of at school for being fat and for not being able to speak English. I was actually dared to step on a scale by some of my friends that were basically just laughing about how big I was. When I got on, I realized that I am 300 pounds, which was totally crazy to me. I immediately had the desire to do something about it. I decided to join our high school football team in order to try to get some fitness. After one season of playing on the team, I was able to shed about 40 pounds, which was pretty crazy. And then that gave me a belief that I could get into athletics on my own. After graduating from high school, I started boxing and doing Muay Thai. I dropped down to about 185 pounds in the process. I was a very different person. Even though I wanted to help people and work as a nurse, I was also hanging out with people that were into going out to clubs, starting bar fights. Like sometimes I would get into brawls, like legit brawls, knock people out. I was very different.
So how did you actually start climbing though? From your childhood, like where did you go climbing for the first time?
Oh man, I have some embarrassing stories. So my boxing coach invited me on the first climb of Mount Shasta together. He was stationed in Afghanistan in military, so I just thought that he knows what he's doing. I was like 23 years old, about to graduate from nursing school. Both of us were really fit, but he was a hard ass. He was one of the few people that I was like literally intimidated by. And we went out to Shasta. Turned out he didn't know what we were doing at all. We had a complete disaster, epic style of an experience. Both of us got altitude sick. I've never been camping in the past before meeting him. He didn't think it was necessary to bring crampons or an ice axe. Mount Shasta is a pretty snowy mountain that you need an ice axe and crampons. Got totally worked by the whole experience. Then my friend from my first nursing job saw my pictures from Shasta, and he was like, "Oh, you're also a climber." And I'm like, "No, I am not. I don't climb. It was just the first time I went camping in my life. Like, this is stupid." And then he just got me into going hiking with him, and we started to go on some simple peak bagging trips to Tahoe and climb things like Round Top and Talac and all these smaller mountains. And then we climbed Mount Whitney together in winter. And I was just like, oh my God, this is the hardest thing I could imagine doing. I really loved that in the mountains, you can just be yourself and you don't have to act any other way. If you try to be too tough in the mountains, you run yourself into trouble really quickly. So about 2 months later, I went onto this peak bagging trip to climb Mount Williamson, which is like the hardest 14er in the mountains of High Sierra. The funny thing about that trip is I wore double boots from about 5,000 feet in the summertime, and like the first snow we encountered was probably at 11,000 feet. So I was just like bushwhacking through this creek called George Creek. It's very notorious here, in my double boots. My partner at the time, she was like, "Have you heard of alpinism? I think you'd be pretty good at it." She saw that I was good at suffering or something.
Yeah, she heard the accent. She was like, Eastern Bloc, like, you definitely should climb bigger mountains.
Yeah. So she told me to read Steve House's book called Beyond the Mountain. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, this guy is like the Michael Jordan of alpine climbing. And so here's where I embarrass myself. When I was a kid, I was following professional sports, and we would go to like Giants games, and we'd try to get autographs of players before games. It was like just the part of being a fan of sports. So somewhere I found Steve House's email address, and I sent him an email like, "Hey, can I get your autograph?"
Did he respond?
No. He probably thought I was trolling him or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Honestly, he was like, "That's weird." He's like, "Nobody wants my autograph." Like, crazy.
Yeah.
Huh. That's such an unusual path into mountain climbing. I mean, I suppose it makes sense because you've done so much in the High Sierra that you started as peak bagging and then built up from there. But like, how do you gain the technical skills?
I'll embarrass myself another time. So I had a friend named Brian who basically like taught me how to use crampons, and we went on to our first climb of Mount Whitney in winter together. Because it was winter, it was really hard to go up the Mountaineers Route Gully, and somehow we ended up scrambling this fourth class rib to the left of it. And I was just terrified because I've never rock climbed. I've never scrambled any exposed terrain before that. And after we got down, he was like, "Yeah, I should take you climbing one time." So he invited me to go climb this multi-pitch route in Lover's Leap. It was like a 5/8 with a big roof at it. And I was completely terrified. I didn't know anything about climbing and gear or climbing in general. Our party consisted of one leader and 4 followers. It was like a complete shit show. And I was gripped out of my mind because I thought that if I fell, I will die. It was the funniest thing ever. But that was my introduction to rock climbing. And then I decided to join a climbing gym.
That's so funny. I mean, I love all those stories, partially because, that's how I started all my climbing. Like, Lover's Leap was one of my first places outdoors. Like, the High Sierra Peaks were a lot of my first mountains. Like, all the small mountains around Tahoe were all the things that I did first as a little kid. That's, like, exactly how I learned how to climb. And so I have, like, a major soft spot for all those areas. I'm like, oh, what a wonderful place to learn how to climb.
Oh, for sure. It's beautiful. It fills my soul with joy thinking about places like Lover's Leap. It's just so wonderful and so nice. It's a beautiful place.
Alex, how badly did the Sierra need a new guidebook?
Well, I think you could kind of argue that the Sierra didn't really have a guidebook. The Sierra has a couple select guides to a few places. And Peter Croft once wrote this, The Good, the Great, and the Awesome, which I always considered my soloing guide to the Sierra because he included some of the best routes, but his guides were so sparse that they kind of only worked for free soloing. You know, it'd be like many pitches up to 5-6. And you're kind of like, man, if you're trying to do that with a rope and a rack, it does not help. But if you're soloing, it's like fine because you can kind of cover the terrain fast. For the amount of rock and the number of mountains and the number of faces and walls and like everything in the Sierra, it's like there just wasn't a comprehensive guide. And there's been so much new development that just wasn't recorded anywhere. The Sierra has like desperately needed a comprehensive guidebook.
How sweet are the Roger and Vitaly's new guidebooks?
Oh, the new guidebooks are freaking awesome. I mean, it's basically what you expect from a modern guide, where you can actually find the approaches, find the walls, have the new routes, have harder routes, have photos of the walls to help you find things. It's just like what you expect from modern guide.
Yeah.
Also, I think it helps that when you have a comprehensive list of the things that have been done, it makes it much easier to add to that because you just have a better sense of like, oh, well, these parts of the face haven't been done, or these other walls haven't been done, or nothing's been done in this style. It makes it much easier to decide, like, what's my contribution? Like, what's something new that I can do, or like something new that's like waiting to be done? I mean, I think guidebooks and just information in general really help with doing new things like that.
I'd say the Sierra Nevada is the water for my soul. It's just an incredibly inspiring place to be. And the whole journey of making a guidebook, I can't even believe that it happened. It seemed so far away and so unbelievably difficult to take on this task of coming up with a comprehensive guidebook where we have about 1,000 routes in 3 books. I am incredibly lucky that I got hooked up with my co-author, Roger Putnam, who already had experience making guidebooks. I feel like I was his muscle and he was the brain of the operation. Because I have so much passion to mountain climb and be in the Sierra, I would be able to get out to all kinds of remote areas and take pictures of different walls, climb obscure routes, and do a lot of the research and heavy lifting. And he was able to put together all my chicken scratch topos into beautiful looking professional topos, edit the text that I was writing, and write a lot of the text that we were doing ourselves, and also create maps for this project. So I feel like by far making the guidebook to the High Sierra was my biggest contribution to the climbing community.
You've been a pretty prolific new router, and especially in some of the more far-flung parts of the Sierra, like the sort of more remote or like less popular zones. I feel like you've been putting up all kinds of interesting things.
Yeah, for sure.
Did that contribute to wanting to write the guidebook because you just had so many new things that you wanted to put out there?
I started writing the guidebook when I wasn't putting out that many routes, to be honest. I started doing obscure routes and realized that a lot of them are actually quite good, and that I couldn't understand why weren't they represented in the guidebooks. I had an idea to make a guidebook that would be comprehensive and expose all of the routes in the High Sierra, partly to capture the history of climbing and partly to give people more of an opportunity to check out different parts of the range. There's much more to it than Temple Crag and the Whitney Cirque, right?
And yet, only a few parts are actually popular. So you've done the biggest traverse in the world, maybe, or something. I don't know. Like what? I don't know. Is it?
I'm not sure about that, but
I mean, it depends. Yeah, it depends how you define technical rock climbing traverses, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us about the Goliath Traverse, which is something that I would love to do someday because I think it's so crazy sounding. Tell us what it is.
So Goliath Traverse is a very large traverse in the High Sierra, which involves climbing approximately 60 mountains that are connected by the same ridgeline. It connects 2 very prominent traverses, one being the full Evolution Crest Traverse, which is about 2.5 times bigger than the popular Evolution Traverse. It goes over peaks like Mount Mendel, Thompson, Gilbert, Darwin, like a ton of peaks. Too many.
yeah, 60 of them, in fact. That's so crazy. And so then where does it go?
Well, it actually starts from the full Palisade Traverse. I did an extension to the full Palisade Traverse, which was the brainchild of Peter Croft and Conrad Anker. They attempted this thing they dubbed the full Monty Traverse, which pretty much doubles the size of the full Palisade Traverse. But I found out only in 2021 that they haven't actually did that whole extension. There was just an article online about their expedition to try it, I guess, before they went out to do it. Like if I was to try to give people an understanding of how long this thing is, imagine if you do the evolution traverse 8 times, and you make it a lot steeper and a lot chossier and a lot harder.
And how long did it take you?
About 8 days, like 7 nights and 8 days.
And what were the total stats? Like how many? You said 60 mountains.
Like about 60 mountains. I did not wear a watch to record how many feet of elevation gain it was, but it was a lot.
Oh, really?
It could be 100,000, it could be 50, it could be 40, I don't know.
Well, it's definitely not 40. It's definitely not 40 because it's like, no, it's definitely like 60 to 100, I bet, just from the scale. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I've had this goal for some years. I actually attempted it in 2016, but bailed after I tried the full Evolution Crest Traverse. And then it took me a number of years before I decided to try it again. And actually it was successful after a lot of preparation and a lot of research that I put into this project. It was such a huge and overwhelming project that it was really hard to start and hard to believe in yourself, because when I found out that Peter Croft and Konrad Anker tried this thing, and that's like, I don't know, to God. And
Totally. Yeah. You're like, if Peter Croft didn't make it, you're like, I'm going to go and do it. And you're like, oh, Jesus. Yeah, that's pretty intimidating. Because he had literally written the guidebook. Croft is like the legend of the Sierra for that kind of stuff.
He's like the God.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
you know, and you have the Holy Spirit with him, Konrad Anker.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
I watched this little film about you and Cedar Wright doing the Sufferfest. Mm-hmm. And I remember you traversed over from Norman Clyde to Middle Palisade, and you were like, this was too much of a ridge, and it was kind of sketchy. And so then I have like this Jesus Christ saying that this thing is gnarly.
Yeah, that is a terribly loose part of that whole middle part of the Palisades. I was like, that is terrible rock and just like not great climbing.
Yeah, it's garbage.
We'll be back with more after the break.
It's the North Face, sponsoring Climbing Gold this year. Alex, what is your action suit?
Well, my action suit, actually, when I'm at home, I think of it as my outdoor clothes because I actually do everything in either outdoor clothes or indoor clothes. And so my outdoor clothes are the super dirty outdoor, the synthetic layers, the fleeces, the puffies, the pants. I think I took this from Mark Twight maybe, but I think I do often think of it as my action suit. You're like, oh, this is the suit you put on to go outdoors. I mean, and particularly on expeditions like Antarctica, where you literally can't leave your tent without your action suit on because the conditions are so extreme that, like, you can't even get out of bed without putting on all the layers and the correct layers with the wicking bottoms and the mid layer and the outer layer and the waterproof layer. That's like, in the most extreme environments, you do really have to wear the suit. It's like going to space. Like even when I'm doing casual climbing at home, I'm sort of like, oh, you may as well have the warmest thing, the lightest thing. And so I'm basically always using Summit Series, which is athlete tested, expedition proven. Whatever you practice in is what you want to perform in. If you're doing scary climbing all the time in a particular pair of pants, a particular jacket, you know that they fit, you know how they move, like that's what you're going to wear for the extreme things as well. The North Face has you covered. Find your action suit at thenorthface.com. How do we get into it? What's our start like? Climbing Gold is brought to you by Yeti. Fitz, where is your microphone right now?
It is currently on top of a Yeti cooler inside my truck in the ski area parking lot.
Is that what Yeti coolers are best for?
No, they're actually really good for cooling.
Wait, so of the Climbing Gold team that's on this call right now, how many Yeti products are within arm's reach of both you guys?
Accidentally, there are at least 3 looking around this truck.
Yeah, I probably have at least 20 Yeti products within like a 10-foot radius of me. And I have my Yeti Yonder water bottle in my pack.
It's like we're like fish that don't even notice the water that we're living in. You know, it's like we swim in a world of Yeti.
I freaking love the Yonder water bottle because it's super lightweight, it's leak proof, so it never spills in my backpack. If I drop it, it won't break. It's kind of amazing to have a bottle that doesn't get dented and is like virtually indestructible.
Thanks to Yeti for supporting Climate Gold. Check it out at yeti.com.
I feel like in my younger years, I would do things on a whim, and I feel like I had a lot more angst. But basically, I feel like nursing changed me as a person over the years after seeing so many people pass away in just day-to-day, like stupid accidents, like normal things that you do on the daily. I became a lot less brave. For example, the first thing that got me into the climbing media was potentially the first free solo of the Widow's Tears, which is like the longest waterfall ice climb in the lower 48 states, it's about water ice for 1,700 feet, which sometimes forms in Yosemite, and it falls apart very quickly. Like it fell apart the day after I climbed it. I did not have a single report on the conditions of the climb. I did not bring a tagline. I'm surprised I brought a helmet. I was pretty like out there when it came to going hard after things that just make some sort of sense to me. And I would never have done that now. I think it was one of my bigger mistakes of my climbing career at this point. I did not have enough skills on ice or knowledge of ice to be there safely and do something like that at that time. So when I got to Goliath, I wanted to cover everything from, I needed to cover everything from A to Z. I wanted to be fit for it. I wanted to have good skills at climbing. I wanted to know much more about nutrition. I wanted to have the lightest gear that I could find. I wanted to prepare myself mentally for it, physically. I wanted to make sure that I am there for all the right reasons, and I feel very comfortable with that. And so what I started to do is I started to climb a lot in Yosemite. I trail ran, started to listen to all the trail running podcasts about nutrition and training, soloing a lot of moderate terrain, and even free soloed a couple 511s at the Cookie Cliff and Arch Rock. I just wanted to do it for myself and give myself more confidence that I can basically do any move on that traverse, no problem. In the springtime, I soloed an A4 route on El Capitan called the Shortest Straw. And aid climbing is not my thing. I'm just not into it. And I wanted to take myself out of my comfort zone and be by myself for a week to see what it feels like on a big traverse. And then I went to Alaska, and my friend and I did the second free ascent of a difficult route on the southwest face of Denali called the Denali Diamond in a 2-day push. So after being at 16,000 feet, being cold all the time, being at 13 and 14,000 feet in the Sierra feels pretty chill.
You went somewhere truly heinous to make all the Sierra stuff feel like pretty vacation-y. You're like, oh, it's so warm and dry.
Yeah, I decided to quit my work around spring and dedicate that whole spring and summer to preparation. And then I just did a lot of trail running and scrambling in the High Sierra that summer.
That's such a real level of commitment where you're like, I'm going to spend 6 months, I'm going to go all in on this mega life project, and I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah, I did not see any way to do it otherwise. To put it in perspective, the first ascent of Full Evolution Crest took about 8 days, and Full Monty was never even completed at that time. And my big vision was to not have any caches along the way, as with the first ascents of the Full Evolution Crest and the Full Palisade Traverse. Because if I have a limited supply of food. I have only a limited supply of time. And if I didn't have that constraint on myself, I almost feel like the full Sierra crest is possible.
How much bigger is that?
I don't know. And it would be unreal. it would be probably 10 times bigger. I don't know.
So you're saying that you felt like you had to do it self-supported with no caches, because if you were going to do caches, then you'd feel like, well, you ought to just go the whole freaking way, and then that's a whole different thing and a different scale. And
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like doing it unsupported and carrying all the food and fuel on yourself is the limiter for how long you can be on the ridgeline.
I always thought that, I mean, the crux is water, isn't it? Like, where do you find all your water?
I was able to find a couple of tarns because you travel over several different passes, and you also go over a bunch of terrain that has snow patches that are melting during the day. I pretty much was starting with 4 liters of water because I was expecting to not find any.
Yeah.
And if I found some, then I would top myself off so I can have more for the following day and for the evening when I'm making dinner and stuff.
What time of year did you wind up going?
August. That whole summer was a monsoon-like season, and I just could not try to do it earlier in the summer because there was not a single 1-week weather window. Probably every other day was a thunderstorm in the forecast.
So for you, when you ultimately did the Goliath, was it fun? I mean, was it joyous or was it stressful? Did it feel extreme or was it great?
It was all of the above. It was a complete package.
Yeah, so it's extreme and great.
Yeah, I feel like it started on a very sad note because my wife was dropping me off at the trailhead. And after driving me from one trailhead to another for about an hour, and looking at the ridgeline that I was pointing out to her that I'm traversing, she got pretty scared for me. She doesn't understand the difference between doing something like the Goliath and climbing Snake Dyke. She's not a climber at all, which is great because she just loves me for who I am, and I don't have to feel like I have to keep climbing hard or doing anything rad. I just try to play it cool and show my confidence. But as I left the trailhead, I like started tearing up. I was not as as confident as I was trying to show her. But then when it started, I was having a lot of fun for the first probably 3-4 days, and then you just get like your skin gets sore, your muscles get fatigued, your quads get destroyed by all the downhill that you have to do. You get worked by not sleeping much out there. It's really hard to sleep at 13,000 feet. I had a 1-pound quilt that I was sleeping in, so it wasn't very warm. And every day I was nervous about the following day, so sleeping was difficult. So I feel like you just end up with so much more fatigue because you're exerting really hard and under-recovering.
If you were to do it again, would you do your gear differently at all? Like, would you take a sleeping bag?
It would be very hard to take a sleeping bag because when you add 8 days of food and snacks, 4 liters of water in your sleeping kit, I think my backpack when I started was about 25 pounds, which sounds pretty light. And most of that was food. I think my whole sleeping kit was like 3 pounds plus fuel. But it's enough weight that when you're scrambling 5'8" and 5'9", it feels heavy enough. And you don't have climbing shoes. You're just doing it all in your approach shoes. The slimmer you can keep your backpack, the better you will feel on such exposed and consequential terrain.
Totally. Well, I ask because sometimes I feel like sometimes when you sleep better, then you recover better, and then you move faster. And so then if you can cut 1 day of food out, like that's the tough thing with planning out some giant challenge like this is that, you know, if you manage to go a little faster, then you carry a little less, but then you never know quite how fast you'll be able to move, and you don't want to wind up like running out of food halfway across some traverse.
Yeah, it's really hard to plan all these things out. We don't know if you will be pinned down by a storm, for example. At one point, I was doing this part of the traverse called the Palisade Crest. It's one of the rather traverses that you can do in the Sierra that's not very well known. It has about 12 or 15 exposed pinnacles. Basically, I was stemming between two gendarmes. I'm pretty good at flexibility because I used to do kickboxing and Muay Thai. And I was trying to get from one to another. And while I was fully stretched out, I got hit by a big gust of wind, which knocked me off one of my holds. And I almost barn doored. Thank God one of the jogs on one side was large enough that I was basically able to do the cliffhanger on that and get over. It was kind of extreme on that day.
That's exactly what your wife was worried about.
Yeah, and so was I, basically things like unexpected windstorms or thunderstorms could always get in your way. And if you don't prepare for them by not bringing a shell or, maybe cutting your provisions short, then you can basically pay for it in the long run.
What was the low point of the Goliath Traverse?
The low point was probably after the Thunderbolt's summit block because I got my rope stuck. I had to reclimb a vertical crack for about 60, 70 feet to get that rope and down climb. So I was already wasting time in the day. And then about 5 minutes or so later, I did basically a backflip and bruised my hip and right bicep severely. I was on pretty easy, second class terrain. So I was boulder hopping and big rocks. And then this one particular boulder just moved and I totally did a backflip. Now, I feel like on the Goliath Traverse, the biggest thing I was fearing is just being clumsy on the ridgeline, especially in the third to fourth class terrain where it's not hard enough to be hard. So you kind of zone out and you're just soloing. But if you don't test a hold or do something clumsy, like I said, you can likely die in the, yeah.
Yeah, and particularly as you get more fatigued, I think that's the kind of stuff where it gets dangerous when you're like, oh, I was just running down third class, and then I just fell down or something. Honestly, that's part of the reason that I haven't done more of those traverses is that I love soloing, but that type of soloing, you're kind of like, man, it's a lot of the danger without much of the rad movement, when you're dipping in your chalk bag, doing a cool move. It's more like, you're just like, man, this feels really dangerous, but just kind of hard work, without a lot of the pure fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like Mathis Crest.
What was the high point of the traverse? Not the literal high point, but what was your favorite moment of your week-long climbing by yourself in the Sierra?
Finishing.
Classic.
Yeah, I cried for 10 minutes straight.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I just felt so liberated. I wept of joy because I know that my obsession over this project came to an end and I don't have to think about it one more day. I swear to God, I feel like it got unhealthy at one point where I was literally obsessed thinking about the Goliath every day of my life because it just seemed so overwhelming and so impossible. It was the biggest thing I could think of that a human could do alpine style. It just seemed so unlikely to be able to do it.
It was so perfectly on the threshold of possible versus impossible.
Exactly.
Oh, it's so close to being impossible. But then I think it's funny. Those are the types of projects that have always grabbed me over the years where you're like, oh, it's crazy. But then you're like, but I think it's maybe possible. And then it tickles the back of your mind forever being like, well, but the traverse I did in Red Rock kind of felt the same way for me. Whereas I kind of played with the idea on and off for a couple of years, and you're like, well, maybe it's possible. I don't know. Is it too big? Is it too much? Do I even want to do that? But then you're like, but I think it's possible. And then you're like, oh, you have to try.
Oh yeah, those are the best goals because they are the ones that drive you to improve. And there's no other way around it. At least for me, I can't just go to the climbing gym or any gym if I do not have some sort of a goal that I'm training for. I need to have a carrot at the end that I'm trying to get to.
The human mind is actually pretty bad at understanding big numbers. And I feel like when Vitaliy was sort of describing what the terrain goes through, I was having the same thing where it's like my brain couldn't totally quite like grab it.
I'm not really sure if my brain totally grasps it either, because like when he started throwing out some of the numbers for the Goliath Traverse, like somewhere between 60 and 100,000 feet of vertical, you're like, oh, 60 to 100K. Like that's, like, what does that mean? Like 60 to 100, but that's so much. And the only way that I can really wrap my head around it is that I put that in perspective with other traverses that I've done. So like the Red Rock Traverse that I did, which I worked on for quite a long time, sort of in my backyard in Red Rock here in Las Vegas. That wound up being something like 25,000 feet of vertical. And, I did it in 36 hours, but I had like a ton of support and I had practiced it a ton, and it's at lower elevation, and I had, resupplies and basically everything to make it easier. And that was like a devastating 36 hours. Like I was worked afterward, my body was like so tired. And to think about doing that 3 to 4 times in a row, you're sort of like, oh my God, that's so much. It's maybe another way to think about it is like the Whirl, which is like the Wasatch Ultimate Ridge Link Up, which is like a kind of famous alpine traverse outside of Salt Lake City. Mm-hmm. I think that also is something like 20,000 feet of vertical and 30 miles of hiking or something. But so the idea of doing the Whirl 3 or 4 times in a row, also you're just like, man, it's so much.
Does it entice you at all?
It does a little bit, honestly, just because I'm like, well, how insane is it? And if somebody else has done it, like maybe it's possible. No, I mean, when I heard about Vitaliy doing the Goliath Traverse, I was immediately like, oh, should I start like doing some of the pieces? Because I have done some of the segments and I love doing stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. But honestly, it seems so daunting that it's maybe less inspiring than some other things could be. Because you're like, oh, it kind of seems like too much. But I'm willing to try the pieces and kind of see if it's too much. We'll be back with more after the break.
Alex, are you a pancake guy?
I feel like it's impossible to feel full from eating a pancake.
That's how I feel.
You have to eat like 100 of them,
too.
and you have to like lather them in peanut butter and stuff. And even then, you're hungry like 20 minutes later, and you're like, what the fuck's the point?
What if I told you there's a pancake that could take care of that issue?
There is a pancake that can take care of this issue. It's Kodiak Cakes.
Kodiak Cakes. Rawr.
Tell me about Kodiak Cakes.
Kodiak Cakes are delicious and nutritious, packed with protein. Breakfast at the Honnold household is often oatmeal or pancakes. The kids get up, Sonny gets all fired up, we whip something up in the kitchen, and we have something delicious and nutritious and filling for the kids.
What else does Kodiak make?
I think Kodiak Cakes are known for the pancakes, but actually I think we eat more of the oatmeal at the house. And they also make these insane little dessert nuggets that you microwave that Sonny was making, like little brownies that she makes in the microwave. They were like the ultimate treat. They're so good, it's insane. Fuel your spring and summer adventures with a quick breakfast packed with the real good stuff. 100% whole grains, protein, and a whole lot of flavor. Find Kodiak Cakes at your local grocery store. They're the ones with the bear on them. Learn more at kodiakcakes.com.
Are you a person that deals like, or have you gotten old enough that you deal with cramps at all?
I've never cramped, really. Great.
Welcome to your 40s, Alex. It's a party.
But I mean, I know young people who cramp sometimes. I just don't cramp. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't either until like 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah? Okay, we'll see.
Last week, dude, I was doing a 50K. I wiped out super hard. I stood up and then my hamstring just like fully shut down like 25 miles into this race. It was like just mayhem. And I stopped and I like put an element into my water bottle and I drank it and I totally like nursed it and it worked. I got through it. I thought I was done. I thought I was like totally hosed in the race. Got through it. Thanks, Element.
Dude, see, I'm just not old enough to properly appreciate it. I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's nice to have an electrolyte drink. It seems, it's nice sometimes. It makes big outings feel better. I'm like, oh my God, you would have DNF'd if you hadn't had your element.
That's what happens when you're 8 years older and you're Gen X and not a millennial.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, if you're exercising and you're sweating, you are losing electrolytes. And so depending on what you're doing and the intensity at which you're doing it, you have to replenish your electrolytes or else you cramp like Fitz.
LMNT is formulated for anyone on a mission to restore health through hydration and is perfectly suited for athletes, folks who are fasting, or those following keto, low-carb, whole food, or paleo diets.
Get your free LMNT sample pack with any purchase at drinkelement.com/climbinggold. That's drinklmnt.com patreon.com/climbinggold. You've had such a crazy progression from climbing in the Sierra to climbing the entire Sierra as a giant thing, and climbing Denali on the way. It's like, do you aspire to bigger mountains, like bigger alpine projects?
I have a lot of ideas for the future. Of course, the idea of traversing the whole Sierra crest is creeping up, but I think maybe I need a couple more years for it to develop. I feel like the Goliath, the lesson that it taught me is that if I could do something like that with so little preparation, like I was tracking of the cardio that I was doing a week, and after the Goliath, I got more and more into trail running and endurance sports in order to learn how can I push my body to adapt to the loads that professional trail runners put themselves through. And what I learned is that I probably expanded what I'm doing a week for cardio by about by 3 times through these last 3 years or so. So I feel like now that I can absorb about 25 hours of cardiovascular training, I feel like I could be a much stronger athlete and have much bigger goals than I had back when I've done the Goliath.
I've done a lot of the same sorts of adventures that you're interested in here, but I've also always known that in terms of real cardio training, I'm a complete Gumby. I couldn't do 25 hours a week of trail running. You know what I mean? Like I would get totally destroyed by that volume of cardio, or just I couldn't handle that amount of running. But what I've always wondered about is that at a certain point, being a better trail runner isn't going to help you traverse 5.9 all day long. Like there's kind of a sweet spot where you want like good cardio, but you don't necessarily want great cardio at the expense of climbing as much as you might need. And particularly with something like the Goliath, where you're kind of rock climbing at a low level all day, every day. It's like you're almost better off just flowing over rock well and not necessarily being a great runner.
Exactly.
Like how do you balance those aspects of training? You know what I mean? Because like ultimately you're not trying to be a trail runner, you're trying to be like an extreme rock climber. But there's just so few ways to train that.
Exactly. So the thing that I wanted to focus on is to find out how to absorb the training. But the training doesn't have to come through trail running after all, because specificity is the key for performing on your big objective.
Totally.
If your goal was to free solo the free rider, if you can maintain 25 hours of cardio, it's not going to benefit you on the free rider. But being able to absorb 25 hours of training that is focused towards the free rider will benefit you as an athlete.
Yeah, which actually, I was keeping track of hours at the time, and I was kind of in the say up to 35-ish hours a week, except that the difference though is because a lot of my hours were at the crag, like sport climbing and things, and so it's not like real hours the way like a runner is clocking hours, because you spend an hour in between burns just eating your lunch and like belaying your partner and chilling. I did that for a long time, and it did make me super tired, and then ultimately did allow me to climb the free rider. So you're kind of like, well, it does work if you do it long enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's about how much an Olympic athlete trains. And the crux of it all is to figure out how to make your body absorb so much training and then be more specific for your goal. So my goals for the future have to do more with alpine climbing and probably big Sierra link-ups. This thing called the Rainier Infinity Loop has been on my mind for many years.
Like trying to do the speed record or just to do it?
The speed record.
What is the Infinity Loop?
The Rainier Infinity Loop runs the Wonderland Trail around Mount Rainier and summits the mountain twice. So what most people do is they summit the mountain, go to the other side, start running on the Wonderland Trail around the first half of the mountain, summit the mountain again, go to the other side and run backwards towards the other side and where they started their first climb. It gains about 42 to 48,000 feet in about 140 to 150 miles. It's kind of an overwhelming objective, but it creates this infinity symbol around the mountain. And this whole idea was an idea of a legendary American climber, Chad Kellogg, who is an incredibly fit guy who passed away before completing his goal on a mountain called the Fitzroy in Patagonia. He was a big inspiration when I was, coming up and, becoming a young climber. I remember one of the quotes that he had was something to the effect that you are the story that you tell yourself. And that, I registered that in my mind. It's so true, because if you believe in yourself, you can do a lot more than if you are doubting yourself.
Honestly, your whole story is basically a testament to that. If you believe in yourself, you can do a lot more than you expect. I mean, it's just it's so impressive. Do you know Scott Bennett?
I have heard of him. I don't know him personally.
He held the speed record for some amount of time, like a while back.
Yeah.
But he's like a friend of mine that I was sport climbing with a bit this summer, and we were going to the crag, and he randomly just started talking about that. Like, he has a bunch of random things like that where I'm like, you did what? When? Like, and you just don't even know. He's like total dark horse.
Yeah.
But
he's a fit guy. He's a really fit guy.
Yeah, he was explaining the whole infinity loop thing to me, and I was like, wait, what? Like, what did you do? Like, that is crazy. Yeah. That is extreme.
The speed record from those days came down quite a bit. Like
totally.
The speed records then involved maybe an 8-hour break at your car type of thing.
Yeah, he like slept in his van. He like had a meal. He took a nap. Like, he was chilling. But back then it was just a matter of doing it because it was so crazy.
Exactly.
Just the idea of like circumnavigating the mountain and climbing it a couple times, and you're just like, that's insane.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, in the same way that like climbing the nose in a day was cutting edge in the 1970s, now it's like you're counting the seconds and you're racing, and it's like a whole different thing.
Yeah, that's because all these people are trying to slowly, chase different carrots and just improve over time. Yeah, and this is awesome. This is the best part about climbing now, I feel like. That I believe we're living in the golden age. And the golden age will just keep on getting better with time. Like, if you look at the High Sierra, in the last couple of years, the hairline got freed by Connor Herson and his partner at like 513 plus or something like that. And then a couple other guys did a new 513C on the killer needle. That's incredible. It just feels like things are getting more and more interesting and harder, and people are coming up with more creative things to do in the mountains. And I feel like the golden age shouldn't be defined by the time that passed, but the time that's the present and is ahead in front of us. And I'm just excited to see what's going to happen next,
Yeah, it's cool. And it's nice to hear you say that, because I feel like it's a sort of common trope, that like, the golden age is behind us. And like, I wish I'd been around in the 70s or the 80s, like when there were so many new things to be done. It's interesting to hear you say that this is the time to be here, because now the hard things are being done. I mean, do you think that's just a matter of perspective, a matter of curiosity, being open to the new experience? Like, what do you think is driving that, the new golden age?
I feel like it's all a matter of perspective on what is the golden age, because for somebody who was climbing in the 70s, that was the golden age. And for people climbing in the 60s, that was the golden age. But for people who are, healthy and living on this planet today, we are in the golden age. And I just feel like it's nice to be positive and encourage other people to get better, and to know that there's a lot of exploration potential ahead. With all the first ascents that I've done, I feel like that just shows you that if you live in the lower 48, you're not a sponsored climber that can go to like the Baffin Island or the Himalayas for huge expeditions. You can still find adventure. You don't need to go anywhere. You can find huge walls or huge objectives in the lower 48 here in our own local mountains. Like, I started doing first ascents when I was probably leading 510 trad at best when I started. So you don't need some unhuman skills to be able to come up with cool adventures. However, I have done several expeditions in the Himalayas and in Peru and all over the world as well. It's just different. Usually the expeditions feel like going to a foreign place, and going on trips to the Sierra feels like coming home and, like you enjoying your family or something. Like that's where my soul is at its happiest.
How do you feel about the whole journey? I mean, it's been like kind of a wild ride.
Yeah, it has been. I just feel incredibly grateful and, satisfied with everything that happened, even though my earlier days were such torture, to be honest. I feel like in the end it made me a stronger person and got me to where I am right now. I made a lot of good connections, a lot of good friends along the way, and accumulated some great memories too. In the end, looking back at the whole journey and doing all the first ascents and exploration in the Sierra, I feel like the most important things about all of those experiences are who you meet and evolve your relationships with, like strengthen your friendships with. I feel very grateful for spending so much time on trails with some of the friends I met along the way.
What would you say now to 13-year-old you that's freshly immigrated to the U.S., doesn't speak English, struggling with health? It's like, what do you feel like you've gained over the years that you wish you had known when you were starting?
I wish I could tell that person that you can do anything you can think of. And it's not an understatement. I feel like for most of my life, I didn't believe in myself. But after experiencing everything that I have to this point, I could truly say it to anyone out there growing up with health issues or struggling with weight or having giant goals on their mind, that yes, if you are truly passionate about following those goals or improving in any way, that it is possible. You don't need to have an insane amount of talent or insane amount of money. It is possible to improve, but you have to just put your whole soul into it.
One of the things that I'm taking from chatting with you is it's all about choosing the right goals. It's like having the right project. Like you need something to inspire you to push that hard. And then you wind up just getting so much better, like by having the right goal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, your whole story is basically a testament to that. If you believe in yourself, you can do a lot more than you expect. I mean, it's so impressive, like what you came from and to what you've done.
Yeah, and it's just really hard to believe in yourself. And I still struggle. I still struggle all the time because even though I've done a lot, I have a ton of voices telling me that you ain't shit all the time. And
yeah, but who doesn't have all those voices though?
Yeah, I feel like it's part of being a human being, honestly. Like all of us are insecure to some degree, even if we tell the environment and the world that, oh, look how great I am. But on the inside, most people don't have that confidence that they portray to the rest of the world. And I'm just feeling very grateful that I found climbing and myself in climbing, because I've never felt about anything as I feel about this particular passion in life. I don't know why, but I don't need to know why. I'm just following my dreams. And I really hope that other people find the same thing that makes their heart desire to live another day to the fullest.
Thank you, Vitaliy, for sharing your story. Vitaliy's guidebooks to the Sierra, they really, truly are a thing of beauty. We've got a link in the show notes, and I think it might help you plan some summer trips. Hey, have you heard that you can get Climbing Gold ad-free? I know a lot of you have been asking, and so this year we made it an option. We're calling it Unroped. Get the show delivered to anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We're grateful to our sponsors, but we also get it. So sign up, there's a link in the show notes, and get Climbing Gold delivered ad-free. Climbing Gold is created by Duct Tape the Beer. Alex Honnold is our host. Our production team includes the talents of Skylar Perwins, Marco Seiler Gonzalez, and Evan Phillips. Our creative director is me, Fitz Cahal. Music today by Solus, Luca Tomasina, Moses Christopher, and Brendan O'Connell. Our executive producers are Jonathan Retzik and Ben Endy for RXR Sports, and Lacey Hendricks and Becca Cahal for Duct Tape the Beer.